Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll learn Masechtas Bava Metzia daf Tes Zayin. We are going to begin on Tes Zayin but Aleph by the two dots, about 10 lines from the top, in which is a continuation from what we learned yesterday, in which we were a little bit cut off. So I'd like to begin by looking at the question on Tes Bava Midbeis. Bamani Shmuel Merav Chazer b'lachem ebalam harishayim mahu. So we mentioned a machlokas to Rabbi and Shmuel in the past couple of days regarding if you have a moicher who also stole the land, and he ends up selling this property to the loikeach, and then the nigzol comes along and wants his land back. So both Rabbi and Shmuel are of the opinion that he'll be able to collect from the gazlan the actual money, yesh lo mos, and it's machlokas of the shvach, if he made any improvements on the property. So the question is, instead here, what happened was, the Ganav went and he bought it from the original Balaam, which means he basically ended up taking the rights of the nigzol. The nigzol would come and collect and take it away from the lokech, the buyer. But instead, after the Gazlan sold the land, which he shouldn't have, he then went and purchased this land from the nigzol, almost kind of removing him from the equation. So the question was, what is the status as far as this land? Can this Gazlan, who is also the moicher, who also purchased the land, so he's also a loikeach, he purchased the land rightfully from the loikeach, from the nigzol, can he now collect this land? And then, of course, he would have to reimburse the lokeach. Okay. So the din is, what did he sell? Kol schus shetavu yadai. Any schus that comes to his hands. So the Ganav went and he bought the land from the real owner after he, the Ganav, sold it to a lokeach. So again, the question is, could the Ganav now act as the original owner? So what does this mean? It doesn't mean that he has a right, which I may have said it that way. I hope I didn't. But in yesterday's daf, basically what we're saying is no, he does not have the intention to now go and collect this land from the person he sold it to. My taima. So Marzich Omer Nichale Delo Nikri Gazlana. He's concerned that the person he sold this land to, unrightfully so, is going to call him a Gazlan. So therefore he specifically went out of his way to buy the land from the nigzol in order that now the person who's lokech is going to be able to keep that field. And he's not going to be able to collect from it, nor maybe that his intention was not to wish to, because he doesn't want to be called a gazlan. Therefore, this is what Rashi says over here. He wanted the lokech to be able to keep it. So therefore, if for whatever reason he wants to seize it, he's not allowed to, because the very fact that he bought this land, the Gazlan later bought the land from the nigzol, is showing that he really just doesn't want to be called a Gazlan anymore, and therefore he wants the lokech to keep the land. And then we had a second answer, Ravashi Emer Nichle Deneku Behemenuse, that his goal is to protect his reputation. So therefore, either way, he's not going to take it out of the lokech's hands, as we assume that he intended to secure it for the buyer, in order to either protect his reputation, again, whether so he should be considered trustworthy, or so that no one should call him a gazlan. And the Gemara said, well, what's the nafgamina between these two reasons? Either way, he's not going to get it. So we said, well, maybe the nafgamina is if the lokech died, and therefore his yorshim, his children now are in the land. So the question is, well, either way, he doesn't want to be called a gazlan. He doesn't want to be called a gazlan by the lokech's kids, and he also doesn't. It's the same thing as he wants to be considered trustworthy. So he said that either way, you would maybe say that he still wouldn't want to collect it, even if the lokech died, and then he subsequently went and bought the land from the nigzol. Still, he wouldn't be able to seize the land. So then we said, well, maybe what if the gazlan is the one that died? So therefore, maybe that's a nafkamina. And we said no, because at the end, the children if you are then able to seize the land, say, oh, he's not alive, so who cares if he's a goslin, right? But he doesn't. The children who are alive won't be able to take the land either because they don't want to be called the children of a goslin. So there shouldn't really be any nafkami between those two reasons. And we end up saying l'maskana until we'll finally get to today's daf, matana, that it was gifted, and we're going to see this a little bit again. So one who says nichle nelekemehemnuse matana nami nichle nelekem ehemnuse, so he still wants to be trustworthy. If he's going to say you're a gazlan, somebody mag gazlina minach, what did I steal from you? In other words, instead of it being a situation where it was purchased, in that situation instead it was gifted. So therefore it was a gift, so he's not considered to be a gazlan. Okay, so that's where we're up to. Now, pshita, and I always get nervous, so the Gemara says pshita not as a question, but this case is pshita, it's never pshita. It usually means that the Gemara is going to get hard also. Pshita of zavna. Let's say the Ganav, again, what happens? He sells the land again, okay? And he did this, or orta, his children inherited it, or v'yavim matana, or he gave this land as a gift. In that situation, clearly the reason why he did what he did was not in order that the Lokeach should be able to keep it. So in this case, because we can see by his intentions of what he did that he sold the land again, or he's just trying to get rid of, he's trying to act as an owner, so he clearly didn't buy the land from the Lokeach in order to, from the Nigzel, I should say. He didn't purchase the land from the Nigzel in order that the Lokeach should keep it. Because if that's the case, then why did he sell it again and all this other stuff? So therefore, because of that, his intentions show that he doesn't want the Lokeach to keep, and therefore he could seize the land, because he didn't buy it to secure it for the Lokeach. But of course, that means afterwards, once he takes the land, he will have to reimburse the Lokeach for the sale. Okay, let's look at Rashi. We have to see every single one of these Rashis. It's a hard piece. Zabna orta im kodem shalachach min abal. If let's say before the Nigzel went and bought it from the Nigzel, chazur umachor ishacher levad min arishain. Right? He said he had stolen property, sold it to one person, then he sold it again to another person, right, before he went to the Lokeach. So obviously this guy, because he swindled two different people, selling them property which wasn't his. So in either situation, certainly it's clear that his intention is not to be able to help out a Lokeach, even after he buys it. Oh harisho echem ibanav, he has one of his children inherited. Oh yava matana, he gives it as a gift. V'yachach locha hai. Then after he buys it, Hai Vadi, Igali Mills, it's clear from his actions, the level Ukmi Kamil Lokeach Rishon Boy. Clearly, he didn't buy it to secure the secure for the Lokeach. Well, he doesn't care about his reputation. Shari Machal Shani sold it, the same land, to a second person. Right? He sold the same land to the second person. So that's a problem. So Nafliyad, or Nafliyad Legazin Birusha, Shemadchil Gazel Echad Mimi Yarshav, Umeis HaNigzel. Okay, let's keep going. So that case is simple. Nafalei Birusha. Let's say that it fell to the Gazlan as an inheritance. Memela, so therefore he received it. He didn't do any work. He just happened to receive it. Memelahi. So this just happened. The love ihu katarach abasrei. He wasn't the one that troubled himself, says Rashi. What happened? That the Gazlan was Yarishit, this land. Birusha Shebedchila Gazal Echad Mimarshav Umesa Nigzel. So the Nigzel died, and all of a sudden this land which he stole, he ends up actually acquiring. So in that situation, he didn't really do anything to demonstrate that he wants the Lokeach to keep it. So therefore, again, he would be able to seize it. Nafal le Birusha. Yerusha Memel he will have Ihu Katar Chabasre. Okay. Gavi Ihu B'chayvay. Let's say the owner owed him money. So then he took the land. So what happened over here? What happened? Says Rashi, after he stole the land, Umachalon, he sold it to this guy, Uvalo Eitzel Nigzel. He went to the Nigzel, V'armelo Hagvi li b'chayvi, karka shegzalticha. Pay me the money with you can pay me with land with that which you stole. So let's say I stole your land, but you also owe me money which is equivalent to the land. So in that situation, basically he wants his money. So he could maybe claim that the land that he stole was in some form of a payment for the money that was owed to him. So gavi ihu b'chayvo chazina, it depends. If this nigzel had other land, v'amar hai be'ino l'ukma kamei l'kech kaboy. If, let's say, the Gazlan says, this is the field I specifically want, the field that I sold to this loikeach, I want you to pay up your loan with this. So why were you specific in that? It must be because you want the loikeach to keep it, and therefore you cannot seize it. Ve'ilo zuzihu deboye pruye. If otherwise, it's just, if you weren't specific, so then we'll say that you just wanted to collect your debt. And therefore, the fact that you may have been given this land, if you will, or whatnot, so the reality is, it's not because you want the lokech to keep it. So it's possible, therefore, you would be able to seize it. Okay. Yava nihile b'matana. What if the nigzel gifts it to the Gazlan? So again, the land was stolen, the Gazlan sold it, and then all of a sudden Nigzel doesn't want to collect. All he says is, you know what, you can keep that land. So the question is, in that situation, can the Gazlan get it back? So you can say a gift is just like a Yerusha that just falls into your hands, and therefore you'd be able to seize it. It's like a sale. If it wasn't that you went out of your way to be nice to this guy, he wouldn't have ever given you anything. Obviously, the fact that he gave you this gift must be that you went out of your way to be nice to him. That's why you made this effort. So this way the Lokech will be able to keep the property, and therefore no one's going to end up saying there'll be anything wrong with your reputation. Your reputation will be okay. So therefore, that's the machlokes. If it's like a matana, so then he could seize it. If it's like a mecher, then he cannot seize it. How far do we say that the Ganev will be buying the stolen land in order to keep his reputation, and therefore he will not be able to seize it from the Lokech? So Amar Rav Huna, Ad Shas Hamada B'Din. So what does this mean? Says Rashi, Ad Shetirpa Min Lokech V'Amidehu B'Din. So if the owner wishes to go and seize the property and taking him to court for the land that was stolen. If let's say it was already Amad B'Din, in which everyone already knows that this guy is a Russia, this guy's a Gazlan, Ad Shas Hamada B'Din Goli Adakta D'Lo Mehimenu. At this point, we obviously show he doesn't care about his reputation. And if he would even have bought it afterwards, after Hamad B'Din, obviously he doesn't care that the Lokech loses it. The Lokech is going to say all these terrible things about him. He's not going to care. He obviously doesn't care, because the fact that he waited until after Hamad B'Din, it demonstrates that he really doesn't bother him. It doesn't matter to him, and therefore, once there's Hamad B'Din, if afterwards he would buy that land, so we say at that point he'll be able to seize it, because clearly he didn't do it for the sake of keeping his reputation. It's already been tarnished. That's answer number one. Rav Omer ad demata ad rachta liyade, until that rachta was placed into his hands. Says Rashi, ad shechayvuhu beis leproy loikeach ma'asav. It's from the time in which Beis Din will mechayev him to pay back the money to the loikeach, because again he sold this land improperly because it wasn't his land to sell. So now the Gazlan has to pay back. And the Amad Barid, he stood up and rebelled. Achikasab Psak Din, until they actually wrote a Psak Din, but Nasl Loikeach al Nechasiv Shel Gazlan. The Kol the Bechol Makayim Sheyimseim Yachsik Behem, you can take his property. V'hainu Tishim Yoim. So Rashi says that's a 90-day process. L'achar Shalmad B'Din. So as it's brought down the end in Gozel Basra, the last parak in Bava Kama, that we give him 90 days. So it's not Amad Badin, but it's beyond that time, which again, if that took place, it already shows clear rebelliousness and not interest in his reputation, and therefore if he would subsequently buy the land from the Nigzel, we no longer say that it was for the sake of the Lekech, and therefore for that reason, the din is that he could seize the land. Okay. Adamat ad rachtal yad. Rapapo aimer ad demas chalon yomi ach razasa. Until it begins the days of announcing. What's that? Says Rabbi, that Karka Michelle Gazlan, Uvola based in the Hain Machrizin, they make an announcement. Shakomi Sharetz Liknos Karka Yavovi Kachena. That anyone who wishes to come inquire the land may go and do so. And it says over here, Shum Hayasimim is Shloishim Yoim. So if you want to get into the nitty gritty, it's Amad Badin, 30 days or 90 days. Okay. Let's understand this. Let's see. Hi loikeach b'maikani. This person who bought the land, this loikeach. Now, he bought it from a Gazlan. So his document, well, who did he buy? What's the deal? So he has this document, which proves that he's the loikeach. But the truth is, shtara chasba bi'almahu. Since the Ganav is one who sold it, it just is a side question. It doesn't make any sense. What do we care what's going on with this lokech? It's not a sale. It's like, what's this whole deal of him keeping the land and the like? We say it's keilu like the moicher, the lokech told the moicher that I believe you. Says Rashi, Sharmulo, ani samech alecha shitnena biyadi. I'm saimich that you will give it to me. And therefore, since the loikeach has this level of faith, maybe shouldn't have, on this moicher, we say, Ba'ahush hana, that hana, the loikamar le'midi, didn't say anything, kasamach le, he relies on me, tarchu maisele, gomer umaknile. So he's considered to be a complete Kenyan. Says Rashi, kishalacha mebalam harishainim, like when it was purchased from the original owners, it's keilu like it should go to the loikeach. So again, the question is that why, if the Gazlan buys it from the Nigzel, why would the loikeach automatically be able to have it? And the answer is because there is this element of a Kenyan, that the fact that he had trusted the moicher, he was saimach on him, so therefore we say gomer machnile, and therefore we say it's actually is a Kenyan from the time that he buys it from the original owners, from the Nigzel, so then it goes to the loikeach. So Meisa Rav Sheish, let's understand. If a person has a future inheritance and says, what I will inherit in the future from my father, that I will sell to you. That which I will find animals or birds or fish in my net, I'm selling to you. Lomer klum, it's nothing, because it's a davar shel ba'olam. They're not here. So how could you possibly make such a declaration? It's not a kinyan if the thing isn't here yet. Mashi irash min abba hayoim machlach, what I'll inherit from my father today, or masha tal masudasi hayom, what's going to happen today. So in that case, machlach davar of kayamin. In that situation, it will work. Gemara is going to say, what's the difference if it's not here, if it's today or in a year from now? So it's a kasha. How we see clearly you can't be makna davar shel ba'olam. We see that. So how could you say that this kinyan is going to work when eventually you go and buy this land from the original owner? Because when the Ganav sold it to the loikeach trusted the Ganav. So therefore, because of that, the kinyan will now in the future work when he buys it from the Nigzel. It's a davar shel ba'olam. So that's clearly a problem. So our answer is, you're right, that is a big problem. And therefore, right? He shouldn't get the land the god of later pays for. You're right. It's a tiyufta, says Rashi. Hari adam galo kamoyhu tishuvasai de katani lomer klum. He said that it's nothing. Therefore, the lekech should not be koina. Kivanda he shaita lavdi dehavi. Since at that moment of the transaction, it was given over to the lekech, he was a ganav, and it wasn't his to sell. Nechse aviv v'amrinan, or for again when it comes to the parents also that I will inherit it. V'amrinan ma machol rishon sheni kos chushet tavo yadai. We don't say that it doesn't work like that. So therefore, in fact, it is a good tiyufta. It actually is a tiyufta. Alternatively, I'm a Rabbi Gaber Kachazin. I see the person tiyufta like Kachazin. It's not a kasha. Hacha samcha daite, b'hacha lo samcha daite. It's all totally in whether you're semach das, says Rashi. Lo samcha daite. The lekech ka'omer mi yemer shiyurish ma'aviv. You klum. So you're saying, that when I inherit from my father, who says you're going to inherit from your father? Maybe your father's going to spend all your money, have nothing left when he dies. Maybe he'll sell it all. Alternatively, who says you're going to fish in that net? So therefore, if you're not, you can't be semech das in such a situation. That's why it's not a kinyan. Mashin can over here, it's possible Lokech was semech das. That we see that he went out of his way to purchase this from the Lekech in order that he shouldn't be called a Gazlan. Hacha lo samcha daite. But again, over here, he was not samech das. Let's get this again. Hacha samcha daite. Hacha lo samcha daite. Hacha samcha daite. The azal tarcha ma'isel kehecha lo nikri Gazlana. Our case, that's the reason why it does go to the Lekech. Hacha lo samcha daite. Over here, when it comes to the Yerusha, not. Shalchu kamei Rabbi Abba bar Zabda. Armul, he said, Zu enu tzricha lifnim. This does not need to go inside. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Ena tzricha kedei l'tartza lachnisa lifnei b'nei yeshiva, to go into the yeshiva. She'ein behen yadu l'parka. Doesn't know how to answer. Yeshuvas ha'goinim porshim l'ganai. Some say this is actually a disgrace. The lake of Kusha, Malia, it's not a good question. Al Talul, Gav, don't bring it inside. It's not a good question. It's not a good question. So then he says, what are you talking about? It's an excellent thought process. So therefore he says, no, it's not a good answer. It's a good answer. It's a great answer. He asked a question. Okay. So now, just in general, how come in the ratio we said Lomer Klom, in the Seifa we mentioned one Hayoim that it does work? So Rabbi Yochanan Seifa, why does it work? Mash Yirish Me'aba Hayoim Misham Kabad Aviv. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Kishohaya Aviv Geisis. The father was dying. And because he was going to die today, he would need the money in order to bury him and for shrouds. So he would be careful for Kavod Aviv to not delay, to not embarrass him. When it comes to the capturing whatever fish I capture today, that's a good kinyan. Why? As we continue to test Zion Amid Beis, Mishum Kidei Chayiv, because that is necessary for survival, says Rashi. Masha Talam Sudasi Hayam, whatever's in your net today, Tiknu Chachamim, the Chachamim said it's okay. Shiu Devar Kayamim, Shemet Sarchu Mizainas Davar Muat. So the point is that even though normally maybe a Davar Shin Bol Olam should not work, but Hayoim it works because otherwise it may interfere his ability to be able to survive. So therefore, for that day, if he says that day, it will work. Okay. Fine. Let's stop here for 1 second. Let's look at question 8. Let's look at question 7, then question 8, because we got cut off yesterday. Gazel karka umacha. You stole land and then you sold it. So the Gazlan sold it to the Lekeach. Oshen nastam b'matana, or it was given as a gift to the person. The Chazar Gazlan b'lochem b'ban Rishayim, and then the Gazlan went and bought the land from the Nigzel. Ha'im yochel ha'Gazlan ha'tzim midi ha'Lekeach hamakabel matana. So he said when he steals the land and he sells it, and then subsequently he buys it. So he said in that situation, certainly we're not going to be moitze miyadai. He cannot take it out of the hands of the lokech. He cannot seize the land, and it's a machokas as to. There are two reasons why: either trustworthiness or gazlan. If he gave it to us as a gift, so then if it hold be shown, we want it to be trustworthy. So also by gift, he doesn't want to tarnish his reputation. But it's because he's going to be concerned that the guy he gave it to is going to call him a gazlan because the land was taken away. What do you mean? Why am I a gazlan? Nothing was taken away from you. Okay, you were given a gift. So therefore, according to that reason, he would be able to seize it. Question 8. Ma sheyirash ma'aba marchalach me'eza oifen ha'mechira chala umadua. So when is it chal? So if he says the word hayoim, ma sheyirash hayoim, tiknu chachamishu devar kiyamim, and it says over here mishum kidei chayav, which is not the right reason, right? The reason why we say it works is because of kavod aviv, so that he'll be able to buy tachrichim and all these different things, so he'll allow this transaction to take place. Again, no one's the davar shel ba'olam, but hayoim works because since you need these things right now, so they made an exception. So it's interesting. The question over here says mishum kidei chayav. Mishum kidei chayav is the trappings of the fish and the like. Okay, so it's interesting. It's a little bit of a mistake over there. Okay. Let's see if we have T, B. Okay, we didn't get to that yet. All right, let's continue. All right. Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. Ha'imul chavero. If a person says to his friend, "Sadashani loikech," a field in which I will buy that I will buy likashekhecha, from when the time I will buy, kanulecha will be you'll be coined it machshav from now kana. Now this is kind of hard to understand because this clearly is talking about land in which I am going to be did not yet buy, but you're going to be coined it. But how could that work? You don't have it yet. Rava mistaber milsa the rab besada stam. Mastama, when he said the statement, is referring to, he just made the statement about field in general. Abu besada zu, if he specified regarding this field, lo. No, because mi yemar dimizavin la nihile. Who says that he's going to end up being able to sell that field? Says Rashi, Abu Amr lo sadazu lo samcha daite. He's not going to be samach das the mekabel matana regarding this gift. Vo haminu, he's not going to be believed the name of nichale deleikum hamnuse. So there's a difference between sadastam and sadazu. Let's see the Rashi above that as well. Let's see the Rashi's above. So he says like this. From the time that you said this, you cannot retract. Kana, if he buys it, he can't retract. Besad is stam. He just says a field I'm going to buy. The Lomer Zu, it didn't say this field. The Samchadainte, the Mekabel Matana, the one who's going to get a gift can rely. Shikach Sada, he's going to be able to buy a field. Vietnanalo, and he'll be able to give it to him. Shaharbi Sados Matsuyas Likach. There's many fields out there. Omer Lo Sada Zu specifically, Lo Samchadaita the Mekabel Matana. Lo Hemina, he's not going to believe him to name a Nichale Delechem Hamnuse. That he's just trying to be trustworthy, etc. Lo Mistaber Kavasid Rabbaha. Okay. So again, it'll be less likely that you will be able to buy this particular field, this one field, as opposed to stam, any field. Okay, so therefore that's why we make that distinction between sada stam and sada zu. Okay, that's the mistaber milsa. Velkim no, I'm rabavil b'sada zu. Even if it's sada zu, even if it's very specific, it still works. Michti. Rav Kaman Amar Lishmai say Rav Meir the Amar Adam Achla Davar Shabbat Olam. And what does Rav Meir say? Nisanya. Harmel Isha. You say to a woman, you say hiskachli marry me l'achashis gayer or l'achashis gairi, marry me after I convert or you convert, l'achashis tachar or l'achash techari, either after I am freed or after you're freed, or for that matter l'achash yamos balech, after your husband dies, l'achsh yachlos l'chivimte yavamech, after your Yavama does you do chalitza. It didn't happen yet. After your sister dies, and none of these things will work. So a woman is like sadazu, like a specific woman, and yet it still works. The davar shel ba'olam will kick in even if it's sadazu. Let's see this Rashi. V'ha isha kasadazu damya. Yesh be'elu she'en b'yadai uhavi atzmo l'kal kedushin. It's possible, you may not get married. Kasher ein biyad zeh l'kufas bal hasada l'machor. You can't force someone to sell their field. De'eved v'shivcha ein biyad l'mashacher atzmam. It's not in their hands to free themselves. Then biyad ishul hamas as bailah. It's not in the hands of a woman to kill her husband or a chaysa or sister. It will be a kedushin l'mafreya. So again, a woman can't do this. It's davar shel ba'olam, but nonetheless, according to Rameir, it will still work. And therefore, we see clearly from here that the din is that even when it comes to sadazu, that the din will be the same. 2 dots. Omer Shmuel. Hamoitzi shtar hakna b'shuk yachzir l'balam. So if a person would find a shtar hakna, which we saw before, Rashi says shekanu mimenu, a shtar which basically obligates one to pay regardless of whether or not the loan actually took place. Shafil lo yilve hamois, as Rashi said, even if you didn't end up borrowing the money, shavadatzmo l'shalmon. So the document is really immaterial of whether or not there was a loan. So therefore, regardless, this monies have to be paid. And therefore, you would find this in the marketplace, you do have to give it back to the Baal. Why? The imishum, because of maybe he wrote it, but he never actually borrowed the money. It doesn't matter. The fact is that this is a shtar hakna, and a shtar hakna automatically, even if without payment, even if we know that no monies were exchanged, you still have to pay it back. Maybe we're talking about a situation where it was already paid back. We're generally not concerned of this chash that maybe was already paid back. We're going to have to ask for the money to be paid a second time. Because the general thing is, if you paid off the loan, you're going to get this document back, the loiva, and you rip it up immediately because you don't want to have to pay it twice if you accidentally lose it. So the fact is, we're not chayshli piroyan. So therefore, by shtar hakna, the din tak is that you can give it back. Omer Rav Nachman, Alba min Safri, Daini demar Shmuel Havi, Vahavina Kvar Shita Kibar Sheva. This is on 6-7. Udarachna Dahavi Machorze, and he remembered that he announced V'yamri, they said, Hani Shidre Aknasa, when if you have a shtar akna, the Mishtache B'shuka, that's found again in the marketplace, Nahadrin Hula Moraihu, he actually is basically testifying to this fact that if there would be a shtar hakna, then it would be returned to the owners. We also find something to support this. Kol Maisi Based when it comes to all forms of Maisa Based which we're thinking about a shtar in which was written, even a hempek, even a shtar in which it was authenticated by the Based it says that Harizeh Yachser, it goes back. Alma loichashina lepiroyin. So clearly see that we're not chashli piroyin. Says Rashi. Alma kivanda leikol mechash l'shema loy loive shar ein mekayam nesashtar element nebal din kamrin b'hagoyz lepiroyin loichashinan. So the Gemara in Bava Kama said that we're not talking about a shtar hakna, but just in general, you can only be mekayim a shtar with its handpick if the Baal Din was present. So obviously it was a shtar mekuyim. So therefore, you can give it back to the malva, and we're not concerned that the wolf already paid, because again it would have been written and ripped up rather, because piroyin you would immediately rip it up. In fact, it's not ripped up. It must be it was never paid. Amar Rav Zera Masnisen, Bishtar, this Masnisen, which is later on Daf Chaf, is Bishtari Chaltasa Va'ad Rachta Labne Piroyin Hu. Actually, this is referring to Says Rashi, the shtar shekasa basin. When it comes to a shtar that the basin wrote, is a moitzi shtar chaveroi v'chayvuhu l'shalim, and the purpose is to be able to try to collect. It has to do with the land seizures. V'shilim, again, he was supposed to pay and he didn't. Yardan l'chasav, you can go to his property. V'shamul bal chayv adam mehem v'nasnul shtar she'al pi basin baloi. So this is the type of a star. Adrachta, Rashi says, Shlo matzu lo yachsham nechasim v'kasalo sheyudav lakso nechasim. You can go after his possessions. V'im yimsa, if you find any monies, then yigva, you may do so. Adrachta, says Rashi, is a lashon roidev, like pursuing. So therefore, that's what it's referring to. Tala b'nei piroininhu. Okay. Omer Rava, v'hani la b'nei piroininhu. You tell me that these are not to be paid, they were not paid back. That when it comes to Shuma, Rashi says Shishoma basin, it was evaluated, that land is returned. Up until 12 months. As Rashi, Im Yipro Lomos Ad Shana, if to pay back the money, you have a year. The Amar Amemar Anaman Hardaya no Sphirli, we hold the Shuma Hadar that he could get his land back anytime. The reason, the whole problem is that he lost himself. The moment that the Lova paid it, he should have ripped up the star. The fact that he didn't, it's his own loss. So inami lemichtav shtarachrina iluye, or perhaps to write a star that I'm buying it back, although I'm getting it back. The Medina Ara Lobain Loboil Mehedar. Really, the land should not be in question. In order to look good, we say it should go back. So originally, when it was sold, the boile lemichtav shtar zvini, you should have written the document gabi shtar chayv. So what are you going to tell me? Imi said the pari boile mikre ushtare. Maybe he should have ripped up the star. Emerish demute kamishtamadle. Maybe he was delaying that matter. Tomorrow he'll give it to you. The hash delay now I don't have. Inam the safra zerle. Or maybe I'm paying the scribe's fee, and that's the reason why I am holding myself back. Okay, let's see if perhaps there's another question here somewhere. Maybe TA3. I'm going to give any moksuba. Goy moksubasa. No. Shtar based in Lubal Chayv Karka. Haloiva Bal Haloiva Lafroy Mois Meizatam Omrid Rabbanan Shishuma Hadar Van Mose Hadar. So you have a Shamu based in Lubal Chayv Karka. Haloiva Uva Hilva Lafroy Mois. So he said it's the Vyasisa Yasha Atayv Halacha Shuma Hadar Oilam. Sounds like I nailed that correctly. It's not an easy piece over here, and it looks like that probably is what the answer is. Tez Zayin Medbez, TB3. Okay, Adkan.